movement is fertilizer for the brain. So if you feel stuck, move your body.
Robin Arzon, a global fitness leader, 27 marathons and ultra marathons, 2 New York Times bestsellers. She's the vice president of fitness programming and head instructor at Peloton.
I was not an athlete growing up, but I think we all have those moments that start as a whisper, and I grabbed onto it. And one of my mantras I developed, which I still use, is why not me? I'm in this for the infinite hustle. I don't want to do this and flame out. No, baby. I want to be one of the most badass 90-year-olds you know. You can't make decisions based on somebody else's doubt because they're not you. If I would have listened to the very well-meaning naysayers, I never would have continued to become the athlete that I am now.
So how did you build that kind of a brand?
I think that the brand builds itself when you...
Robin, you discovered your passion for running after a very traumatic experience in New York. Can you take us back in time?
Yeah, I mean, it was decades ago now, but it does feel like it was just the other day. In fact, the other day I was walking by where the incident happened and I was just kind of thrown. I mean, it's funny when you look back at your own history and you're like, wow, I was right there, but also I'm a totally different person now. But, you know, to get your listeners up to date or into the story, I was on a Friday afternoon going to meet my girlfriends.
How old are you?
20,
were you? Yeah.
I was entering my senior year at NYU, so college age, and I had planned to go to law school the following year. And, you know, on the eve of graduation, you know, that year. So it was all very exciting times. I was meeting my girlfriends after work. I was a paralegal at a law firm, kind of doing my corporate gig. And that's like a great day. It turned into a horror movie, you know, really within minutes. A man walked in saying that he'd been shot into the wine bar where we were sitting. And tiny little wine bar in the East Village. And from then on, basically it was like there's a before and then an after. And then that was the inflection point that it became the after. And I essentially became, I was held hostage that night by the man who had shot the gentleman who had walked in. And so the perpetrator walks in, he grabs me, then it's chaos, expletives, guns, flailing. I mean, it was truly like, a horror movie. And by the time the police were called, because they had bystanders had heard shots from outside. By the time the police arrived, there were probably 20 of us in this wine bar with this man who was you know, just like spewing hate, wanting to kill everyone that was in there, including me. And I was the person he kind of held onto throughout this incident, literally using me like a human shield. And I became basically the pseudo negotiator between him and the NYPD who had gathered outside. And the incident was a few hours long. And in that time, it was kind of like going from speaking to this man to speaking to the NYPD, to almost like having the silent conversation with myself that like this was not going to be the end to my story. And that thankfully was not. And a really brave woman named Anne Margaret basically kind of jumped him from behind. And that ended the takeover because they basically were able to get him, you know, on the ground. And that's when the NYPD were able to rush in. I was standing in front of him. So all of this action kind of happened behind me. So I just felt the sensation falling. And yeah, so that was it. And that intensity and trauma kind of brought me in a very meandering way to running, which ended up being kind of a very healing journey for me.
So before we go to the running, this is a fascinating, and by the way, you talk about it in Shut Up and Run. So it's an incredible book. Like I laughed, I was frantic, like all the emotions come in that book. Like it's incredible. And you are trying to actually talk to that person. And I think that's fascinating. Like you're trying to really understand him and engage with him. Can you talk a little bit of what's going on in your head for a second before we move for that? Because I think that's your personality, Robin. And I want to go there for a second.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I didn't realize this. I was doing this at the time, but I was trying to humanize the folks who were in the room, and kind of, I guess, humanize him. Like I just wanted to have I didn't want to anger him further. And I thought, oh, well, if he understands that like we're daughters and brothers and friends and, you know, the folks in here also have loved ones. And he was talking a lot about his loved ones and he was speaking in Spanish. So I started speaking to him in Spanish. And so I was just like, I just want him to be able to see us, you know, because there was just so much rage. And later, having spoken to real hostage negotiators, I realized that that is actually one of the tactics that they use. I didn't even know that I was doing that, but that is what I did at the time.
And that's incredible because we actually had Chris Voss, who is a hostage
Ah, yes,
negotiator
exactly. He
from the
comes to mind.
FBI. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he says exactly this, and then I'm reading it in your book. I'm like, how did Robin know? I mean, it was incredible. So, but it's somehow your instincts. So you're getting over this, and I can't even I don't even know if you ever really get over this experience. But that takes you to running. What happened, like Robin? Why running? Like, how did that even come about?
I don't know why running. I was not an athlete growing up, so it wasn't as if I was like trying to relive, you know, high school glory days or something at a later point in my life. But I was in law school and I don't know. I had this feeling, I think the added acute stressors of law school plus the trauma, it was like something had to give. And I didn't realize because I basically went back after this hostage incident. I went back to school. I took like 2 days off, went back to school, was back in the grind. And I think ambitious folks like get it. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on the to-do list and the calendar and the graduate. You know, it's like the next finish line, so to speak, figuratively. And a year later, when I was in law school, I was just feeling overwhelmed, to say the least, and that. I just looked at like dusty shoes in my closet one day and I was just like, what if I just like wore them and didn't, and I literally put the keys down, you know, my car keys down. I was like, what if I just went on foot to campus? I have no idea why, but I think we all have those moments that start as a whisper, just like a little fleeting curiosity. And I grabbed onto it. And it wasn't like, and then I was this marathoner and it was, you know, this Rocky montage. No, it was like these initial runs for a long time were horrendous. But in those runs, I realized I wasn't thinking about law school stress or almost dying or the trial. What drummed up a lot of emotion as well was this is when the criminal prosecution was happening and I was a witness, but I was also in law school. So like I kind of it was like a lot. I was unpacking a lot, but during the runs or walk jogs, whatever they were, I wasn't thinking about all that. And then I realized, oh gosh, I have a tool. I have a tool for my toolkit now that was pretty magnificent.
And that's incredible, Robin, because if somebody has not been a runner, and even if somebody has been a runner, the first few miles are you know, and that you do, I mean, are suffering. So, so what made you go again and again and again? Why not put the towel on this and say, you know, screw this, let's take the car? Like, why? What do you think? Is it really just being suddenly thrown? Not thinking about
I guess
the
it's this
rest?
idea that we can choose our hard. And
Mm,
it was two things. You can choose your hard. And the second is I liked myself better after a run. Like this was a totally selfish vehicle to befriending myself. And I just needed to like myself a little bit more. And that's what the run did. And then it was like, yes, when I was doing marathons and ultra marathons, and then I really educated myself around it, I was like, oh my gosh, there are all these other benefits. But it really started with the conversation in between my ears.
incredible. And again, I love the choose are hard. But you choose hard in all directions now. We'll talk about this. Like, I think you forgot the R, like you just go in all directions. We'll talk about it. But so how from that moment you went into like career in Peloton and all, I mean, and there's also a big difference, Robin, between I'm going to run 3 miles and I'm going to do ultra marathons. So there's a huge difference. Like, take us there in both directions. I mean, you go in the career, you go in the sports. Take us there for a second.
I started learning about people like, amazing endurance athletes like Rich Roll, who's now a friend of mine, or Scott Jurek. And, these folks are, or like Allison Felix, Kara Goucher, like these athletes who are just incredible. And I got really inspired. I specifically got really interested in the ultra running world. And that is a world, if folks aren't part of that world, it's just really welcoming and warm and accepting. And it's like, so what? You're not a 5-minute mile. Like, let's just go out here on a trail, or, let's just do it. Let's just put one foot in front of the other. And that was amazing. And also I liked the training. I liked that you can like put training in a calendar and achieve, like, do the work and achieve something. Like, that just felt really gratifying to me. And it gave me an outlet. At this time when I was doing ultra marathons, by this time I was practicing law in New York City. And it was obviously a lot to balance all of that, but it at least gave me something that wasn't work. And again, the meta message was, you like yourself better. You like yourself more after you've done this. And yes, I definitely took it to some extremes. But that was also out of curiosity. I was like, well, if my body can do this, why can't it do that? And one of my mantras I developed at the time, which I still use, is why not me? I would look at these, read these magazines and read these memoirs of these runners. And I thought, oh gosh, well, I don't know if I'll do that, but what if I do my version of that? Why not me?
Incredible. And that's incredibly strong. For those who don't know what's an ultra marathon, tell us a little bit.
It's technically anything over 26.2 miles, or like 40 something kilometers, 44 maybe. And that, that can go a lot of distances, I have a friend, Bex Gentry. She ran 7 marathons in 7 days around the world. So there are obviously lots of ways to do it. I think my farthest distance has been 100 miles or 5 marathons in 5 days across Utah for charity, for MS Research. But very traditional distances are like 50K, which is around 31 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles. And then there are stage races, which you might do, in 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 days, a lot of miles.
Crazy. And we actually had somebody that ran the Sahara, Charlie. Anyway, we had some crazy
Marathon
people.
Marathon is a great example. Yeah. Yes. Amazing.
So I guess there's never a limit to the amount of craziness. But tell me, Robin, you then decide to not go the law route and completely change. Can you take us there for a second? Why?
I was counting down the minutes, the hours. I was if there are any lawyers who are listening or watching, all about billable hours. So you're living in these increments of 6-minute increments. So I was very aware of time, hyper aware of time. And I would count down the hours until I could run, lift, go to spin class. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, if I'm working out on a good week, 4 days, am I really living for like 4 hours a week, 3.5 hours a week? Like, that felt wild. Especially having just had this experience in my early 20s, by my late 20s, I was like, screw that. Like, what do if I put all this work to befriend myself, why then I should put myself in experiences that I feel excited about, or at the very least challenged by in a way that gets me excited. And it's interesting because, practicing law wasn't like, oh, I hate every day. It was just, I'm fine. And I believe that we deserve existences that are more than fine. And I think that is the distinction that we don't often talk about. It's like this malaise that is pervasive, and is, what if you deserve better? Like we almost resign ourselves to this, like, oh, well, it's just okay.
Right.
No, it's not. So that was the impetus. And it was a really slow kind of burn. It was like a 2-year slow burn that I thought, oh my gosh, well, how the heck am I going to pay my bills? And I'm living in New York City. And obviously I'm super, super privileged to have this amazing gig, this corporate gig. And there wasn't a clear path, because it wasn't like, okay, now I want to go to business school. And now I was truly like, I felt like I was like just walking in the jungle with a machete or something. And I read an article about Peloton, and I reached out to the company cold. And that was really what started my relationship with Peloton. And at that time, I had already been writing my first book, Shut Up and Run, as you mentioned. And I was, coaching runners and teaching spin classes, and kind of doing Jill of all trades, I guess, because I was just trying to plant a lot of seeds and seeing what would sprout.
So how do you reach out of the blue, completely cold, to Peloton? I think there are a lot of our listeners, they might have a dream, right? But it scares them. Well, maybe it's not for me, or maybe I don't know, and I don't know anybody, and how can I make it work? How do you reach out?
Energy is such a currency, right? And obviously these interactions are really great when they're in person, but this happened to be an email, and I just like poured, I was putting in the reps, so to speak. Cause like I would get into a taxi cab and be like, I love running. Do you love running? Like literally anybody who would listen. I went to the 2012 London Olympic Games as a spectator and as like kind of a blogger. And I was just putting in the reps, recording, writing, talking, like anybody who would listen. I'm excited about this. I have a point of view, as a Latina, as a woman, as an urban athlete, as a hustler, and I wasn't seeing it represented. So I was like, let me just find the right partners, the right people who also are like, want to tune into this frequency. Like they want to listen to the radio station that I'm emitting, so to speak. So I basically poured all of that I had kind of been honing and crafting into the email specific to Peloton. I was like, I did a vision board, and in the business quadrant of my vision board, I didn't even know what this meant at the time, but I wrote disruptive storytelling plus technology. And I had a picture of like a little Apple computer, and like I really didn't know what this meant. But when I read about Peloton, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And truly, it was just a cold email to like info@pelotoncycle.com. And they read my email and responded a few days later. And then I auditioned. This was before the company had opened its New York City studio. And so I auditioned like in the corner of the corporate office that only had like 25 employees, startup vibes for sure. And it changed my life.
Incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible. And I love energy as a currency, because it's true, right? When there's some people that the minute you get in the room, they just suck the air out, right? And there's people that it's opposite. It's like it's just so inviting, right? But you get into Peloton, and you do all these things, running, etc. Can you share some hard moments and something challenging and how you tackle? Because there's always hard moments. The question is, how do you tackle them?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, for sure. So many. So actually on the eve of joining Peloton, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is like my dream job. I've got a steady income again, doing something I'm obsessed with. And probably like a week before I started at Peloton, I was feeling really fatigued and lethargic and getting up at night, frequent urination during the night. I was like, what is going on here? And I thought it was ultra training or jet lag. I had just gotten off an international trip visiting my sister in India, who was working in India at the time. And, we explain away everything, and often. And I was trying to explain it away. My mother's a physician. She was like, absolutely not. Like this is a sign actually of type 1 diabetes. And I didn't even know what an endocrinologist was, but I made an appointment like that Monday. blood work and discovered as an adult, my pancreas was producing little to no insulin. And this training cycle for this ultra marathon, I didn't even notice, but I was losing weight, like all these things. So that week was really like daunting. And I knew I was basically going to be then working out in front of, folks. I mean, at this point, it was only probably like 10 people on the leaderboard. But it was really, really daunting. And I was starting this new venture. And I obviously wanted to feel great and prepared. And I was neither. But I just focused on what I could control. And I educated myself, with this new technology and what I would now need, new medical team, new doctor names, new medical terms. I asked questions when I didn't know what I needed to know. And I focused on what I wanted to control. And or what I could control. And the important thing also is to kind of remember your North Star, because I was in a lot of different rooms where it was like, oh, now that you're type 1, ultra training, oh, now that you're this and that, and it's kind of, folks, I think most of the time do mean well, but you can't make decisions based on somebody else's doubt because they're not you. And if I would have listened to kind of the very well-meaning naysayers who I think were just being protective, I never would have continued to join Peloton. And for sure, I wouldn't have continued to become the athlete that I am now.
Wow. That's so powerful. Because I think you'll hear 1,000 things from different people, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether it's running, whether it's whatever you try to do, there's always the people, the voices that will try to keep you safe. Like I don't necessarily think that they mean bad, but it's exactly not what you need to hear at that moment. And you need to decide. You can listen, but you need to decide what you're actually going to listen to, what you're actually going to, take their advice or not. But at that point, you decide to go for it, and you are pushing your body to a whole different level. How does it react, and how do you react on the journey?
I want to go back.
Honey, sorry.
Oh, they should say hi. Wait, come say hi.
I want to go back, Mama.
They're going to be part of the show anyway. I'm going to talk about them. Let them say hi.
Whoa. My tea, hold on. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi. This is you met Ilana in Necker Island.
Yeah, we met.
All right, baby. Mommy's working. Can you go with Lysandra?
So
Oh my God, she literally I was like, I asked my nanny, I was like, what's going on? She was like, she jumped out of her crib. She literally jumped out of her crib to come say hi. Oh my God, mom life is so real.
I know. I wonder whose genes she is jumping out of cribs, right?
No, seriously.
But now that we talked about it, let's talk about it, because you do all of this with 2 tiny ones. And I saw you in Necker Island. Can we talk about this for a second? Like Richard Branson, private island, an adventure race, and you are with 2 tiny kids, nursing one, running, biking. Like seriously, like we were all dead there, and you were doing also motherhood. Like I have no clue how. Let's talk about this for a second. Like I think it's important.
Oh my gosh. I mean, listen, like I think moms, caregivers, we just figure it out. And I'm really grateful for help. I mean, my husband is an incredible partner. We did bring our nanny on that trip because otherwise that would have been totally unrealistic
Disaster.
for the care. It would have been a disaster, absolutely. And I think, I'm just in the season, I will look back to this time in my life, I'm certain, even the hard days, and be like, gosh, what I wouldn't give for that amount of chaos in certain ways. You know what I mean? For me, these are the good old days. So I'm okay maximizing. I'm okay with more. Yes, that requires, some element of protecting my peace. There are a lot of social engagements that I say no to, because I'm business. Basically, it's like business and family life. And there's a lot of the in between, the happy hours, the things, the charity events, like stuff that I would love to attend, but it's usually a no. And that's why. And then it's also really understanding very clearly what a yes looks like. I think before becoming a mother, there would be opportunities that came my way that I'd be like, well, I just have to do this because so-and-so did it, or this person, it's just, I have to do it. And it's like, well, no, you don't. Why? What does a yes even look like? And I think especially after you've had some successes or, you kind of, sometimes like it begets something else and it's like the next expected thing. It's like you publish one book. It's like, oh, what about the next book? You do one race. Oh, what about the next? Da, 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 da. And it's like, oh, wait, but like, whoa, what's my yes? And I think I'm proud that I've been able to kind of read the tea leaves, so to speak, for my own definition. And my own, when that's deciding whether I'm going to do a partnership, whether I'm going to, take on a certain brand deal or, a certain project. I really try to go internal rather than my initial kind of, oh, I have to do it. I use my no pretty judiciously.
And this is so, so, so important because every time you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else. And the question is, what is the no, right? The no is time with family. The no is time at work. The no is time on your personal branding, whatever that is. There is always a no when you say yes to one thing. So you just need to figure out, what am I shutting the door on when I do say yes? And sometimes it's totally worth it and sometimes no. And so I love that. And the way you were able to balance it all, I thought that was really inspiring. I personally don't bring my family with me because I was just like, when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm doing this, like I need to compartment. But it was just beautiful to see how you're all, it's all part of you, and which is really, really beautiful. But again, you need to find your you, but what's right for you. But let's talk about this for a second, right? But let's talk about that adventure before you go back to Peloton, because I still want to go there for a second. But we're going to this adventure race, or whatever that is, call it whatever, crazy biking, whatever, like running, even swimming for you, which I want to talk a little bit about. What was it like for you?
Yeah, being on Necker Island with Richard Branson for the Strive X was, I think it was an adventure. It was pushing yourself physically so you can kind of drop the pretense mentally or emotionally. I think there's always this tipping point with physical endurance and strength and activities that you kind of just, you don't have the energy anymore to have the wall up. And I think for especially high achieving people, that is a really unique environment, especially when you're surrounded with, when you're in front of somebody like Richard Branson, who like, if you're going to Necker Island, you admire and know who Richard Branson is. And so I think you can go much deeper and have much more, connected experiences when you have that physical element. And I think that the way that we experienced the trip, it was about like 30 of us. So just big enough where you feel like you can actually connect with folks. And it was really paired, the physical activities every day, call it like 4 to 6 hours of activities every day, were paired with really meaningful conversations and workshops at night. So, for me, it was like a dream week. And you mentioned the swimming. So I didn't know how to swim. I could doggy paddle, but I really didn't know how to swim before this. And I was one of the co-hosts of this Strive X event. And I thought, okay, well, I have to do all the stuff, right? Like I can't opt out. So, and I had about 3 months and I was like, okay, I have a finish line, so to speak. And I really learned. I hired a coach and I went to the Long Island Sound and I did open water swims, and it was really, really hard. And it's interesting because I'm looking at, and I did do the swim. I swam a mile freestyle, no swimmies, no anything, no unassisted. And that I was really proud of that. But if you were to ask me, are you a swimmer? I would still say no, because in my mind, and I remember this point also in the beginning of my running journey, it took me the longest to say I was a runner and I was already doing races and whatever. And I think in my mind, it's such an interesting example of we become the stories that we tell ourselves, because I have done a lot of different things and played a lot of different roles in my life, and swimmer is yet to be. And I think next summer, maybe I'll solidify it, but I think I need a few more of those moments where I'm just like putting myself in the ocean or putting myself in the pool and like remembering that neurological piece of me that I guess developed. But I don't know. It's so funny how we can do a lot of things, but then there are always these pockets of hard that it takes our identity to embrace.
That's such a powerful quote. I literally wrote this down because I don't see myself as a swimmer. As far as I'm concerned, I kind of survived the swim, and it was the first time I ever needed to swim. What was it, 4.5 kilometers? I'm like, that was crucial, but that was brutal. But yeah, I will never call myself a runner or a biker or a swimmer, but it's so interesting how you create identity out of things. So take me there. So you grow up in Peloton, but beyond Peloton, you start creating this mega brand that has, I don't know how many millions, Robin, like I can't keep up, but has millions of people that, the minute they hear Robin Arzon, I'm like, oh, now you're the cool kid. If you know her, you're cool. So how did you build that kind of a brand with you?
Oh, I think the brand, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of marketers who have varied opinions on this, but I think that the brand builds itself through consistency. And for me, it's always been about using my voice even when it shakes, and kind of trying to hold space maybe for folks who feel like that wellness isn't for them, or maybe they didn't grow up seeing examples of folks who looked like them or talked like them in some of these spaces, especially like traditional white male spaces. And as a woman, as a Latina, I really try to hold space for lots of different types of communities, but more so it's a value of like, I think I live the value of a hustler and somebody who really is gritty but appreciates a work ethic and is willing to define their own finish line. And that really, it still excites me. So I guess reputation becomes a form of wealth. And I think that the brand builds itself when you show up consistently. And I have done that. I've been at Peloton 11 plus years. And, I've been in wellness for longer than that. So, there's a lot of different moments where you can kind of show up and tell a consistent story in that time.
But you do tell a very consistent story. And by the way, there's also a book, right? Welcome Hustler.
Yes, Welcome Hustler.
Right? Because I think it does take some hustling for sure, but also that consistency, Robin. Again, most of us don't feel like posting every day or don't feel like doing something every day. And you're still able to, even though you have the brand and you have a lot of followers, you'll still get up every morning and or whatever that is, right? Whatever the cadence is, and you'll still post something and you'll still give back and you'll still think about what are my followers need to see right now. What drives you?
I call myself a fire starter. Like, I think in a lot of different environments, I can be the spark, or, the spark for somebody's curiosity, for someone's motivation, for someone's excitement. I found that is I think it's my purpose. And, the different hats that I wear, whether it's mother, entrepreneur, business person, spin instructor, strength coach, running coach, that is the through line through all the partnerships, all the brands, all the experiences. I want to light fires under people. And I want folks going back to that malaise, going back to that, I'm okay. Yes, being okay is is better than being a lot of worse things, especially clinically, but you deserve more. Why not you? that has always been, not always, but since adulthood, that's been a very pressing question. Like, why not you? And then I want to offer folks tools, a toolkit for how. Because
Right.
if the why is like big enough and strong enough and loud enough inside, the how is always going to be achievable.
Incredible. And that's what started also the Swagger Society community, and you're continuing with another book launch. So tell us a little bit, Robin, what is going on? What are you continuing? What is the Swagger Society?
Yeah, so Swagger Society Media Company is really became a lifestyle membership club that we spun out, call it a year and a half ago, to go deeper with folks who are of the growth mindset, and who wanted to go a little bit deeper than the traditional Instagram post or Facebook post with me. And so we have quarterly, we call them Queendom Halls, and we gather, and it's kind of like it's my master. It's an extension of my masterclass outside of social media, right? So we built our own private app, and Swagger Society now is taking these conversations to media partners and brand partners, and we host in real life events every single year, twice a year. And this really becomes an opportunity for the community to gather in real life and kind of connect both virtually and in person and have conversations. So whether it's me interviewing, the editor-in-chief of Women's Health, or whether it's bringing an amazing person, former athlete. I interviewed, Mark Cuban, for example, as part of a conversation teeing up Swagger Society. So these are kind of things that if I'm curious about it and I have questions about it and related to leveling up one's life and growth mindset kind of values, then that's kind of under the umbrella. And we're going to be spinning out licensing and merchandise and clothing. And so it's kind of the place that lives for me to play, but also play with purpose.
Love that. Incredible. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we can blend with careers and that together, but that's still in the making. But so talk to me a little bit about your cookbook. So that is coming. It's a big one for you.
It is that, yeah, the cookbook. 2025
tell me.
is my big cookbook preparation year. I am literally recipe testing right now. It will be out in 2026, and this is such a cool. So I'm a plant-based athlete. I'm vegan. I've been vegan for over 12 years. So that means I don't eat meat or dairy, eggs, and I basically thrive on plants. And I wanted to create a protein-packed plant-based cookbook for folks. Yes, of course, there are plant-based folks who are like, wow, great, but I want to learn, I need more recipes. But for me, I'm taking a wider approach, a broader approach. This is for the person who just wants to increase their protein portfolio. Like, right? Like you look at your investments, it's like, this is what I want for folks, is to think like, okay, maybe tonight I'll try one of these recipes. Obviously I believe it's great for the environment and it's great for our bodies. But as an athlete, I have lived this, and I know that, as someone who trains multiple hours a day, 6 days a week, I know that you can fuel intentionally with these recipes. And that's the goal, is to put something out in the world that allows individuals, athletes, families, and just the plant curious to have a resource.
I love
and
that.
also it's very real. Like, it is how I cook. It's not like, okay, well, you need to curate this recipe for 72 hours and then you need this special dish and this pot and this special machine. No, this is like how I cook in my kitchen. I have 15 minutes. My kids are going crazy. Like, I am starving. This is what I eat. And that's the goal.
That sounds a lot more for me, but
yes.
So when you're looking back, Robin, what would be some of the things that you wish you could say to your younger self?
Oh gosh. There were closed doors, and there were kind of, they say, like, be grateful for the redirection. I know there's some kind of saying that I'm blanking on now, but the many moments where I felt like I was being redirected. And, you know, now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I didn't do this, that wouldn't have led me to that, and then I don't meet my husband. If I don't do this, and then I don't end up at Peloton. And that trust in, as somebody who's ambitious, as a hustler, finding the way to continue to hustle, but also trust in closed doors and life's timing, that I'm proud of. So I would tell the younger version of myself, like, you will find the balance of your hustle with life's and the universe's signs and timing. And I wouldn't have believed you. I would have just been like, but here's my to-do list and here's my calendar and and I'm going to force it. And it's just, no, girl, that's not it. So I think that there's a more nuanced energy that I have now to the hustle, which, gosh, I'm grateful for, because that means that my hustle has a long game. Like, I'm in this for the infinite hustle. I don't want to do this and flame out and say, oh gosh, yeah, wow, I had it in me for a year. No, baby. I want to be one of the most badass 90-year-olds you know.
Oof, powerful. and I believe you. But I think what you just said is so powerful, because I think the balance is really hard for high achievers, right? If you're driven and you're a high achiever, when something fails for you, you're trying to continue. I know I did, right? And it took me time to realize this is a dead end. You're knocking on the door that is not going to close, or not going to open. If it is, it's not where you want to be anyway. So you better trust and go with what looks right. But at that point, it feels very hard. So can you share for a second a hard moment that you needed to like lean into and say, you know what, this is probably the wrong door that I'm knocking on?
Oh yeah. I probably have a few examples. I'm trying to think. I have two examples. So one, before the Peloton entered the chat, so to speak, I've always been really into fashion and very kind of enamored by design. And I thought, okay, this is back in the day. I had already left my law firm and I was kind of flailing about New York City. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start I'm going to start an athleisure company. As if that's a casual endeavor. And I put money into the company. I was sourcing designers, fabric was coming from Asia. Like it was like, it was starting to be birthed. But I was also writing my book, and I was doing all these other things. And there's no you don't just casually do this, right? And I realized, oh my gosh, if you don't pull the plug, if you don't just eat the cost now, you are going to be such a failure in this. And that inability or unwillingness to see that through really felt like a failure. And then fast forward to now, I am working on an entirely crafted line with Peloton that is going to be coming out later this year. And it is like, wow. Right, girl. Like if you would have had these failures, it was just like, what?
Amazing.
That is like knowing distinguishing between a failure and a pivot is really kind of tricky. And sometimes you don't know which one it was until you zoom out a little bit. But I'm very grateful for that. And then a more recent one, a more concrete one, I was signed up for the New York City Marathon in 2024. And I thought to myself, okay, you're 1 year postpartum, like this, you must run this race. You have this entry. People would kill for this entry. And the long runs just were not sitting well with my body. Like I think I was still healing a little bit in some sense from having Atlas, my son. And again, it was like 4 weeks of just like, try again, lace up, do it again. You know how to do this. You've done 27 marathons. You got this, number 28. And I just had this like crushing 10 miler where I could barely eke it out. And I was like, girl, why? So I pivoted. And I pivoted in a way that made my life so much more enriched. I ended up signing up for a High Rocks competition, which is 8 1K runs and 8 kind of strength things. And that training cycle, that 2024 training cycle was so much more rewarding because I pivoted. And yes, I might have eked it out. Yes, I might have crossed that New York City Marathon finish line. And to what end? If I was miserable, then what was the point? And I think, yes, there are definitely like, there is going to be a level of discomfort in any of these achievements. So you're kind of like, oh, is this discomfort or am I just like cutting out too early?
Right.
So I don't know, I can't answer that for folks. It depends. But for me, those are two examples of like, I was just, it was totally the right call to pivot.
And I do believe, and I love these stories because I do believe that creates the muscle that you need to build in order to do the next things that you want to do. And I think that's just so powerful. But we need to sometimes tell our stories from the scars, not the wounds. So when there's a really open wound, it's sometimes really hard to admit to the story, but we needed to wait a little bit until it scars. So Robin, for people who are listening or watching, and they're saying, I want to elevate my career. I know I'm a fraction of who I could be. I want my name out there. I want to do something that matters. I want to make an impact. What would you say to them?
I mean, I think that those are all the right questions, right? Now it's figuring out like what story are you telling yourself, and then what story are you telling the world through how you're showing up, how you send the text, how you sign the email, how you show up to the event. Like these are all like branded moments. And so when earlier when I said the brand builds itself, it's like, these are the small inflection points. And obviously education is a huge passion of yours. It's like, how are you educating to stay relevant? Like how, like, I think finding the spark, finding the question that you want to answer for the world, that's a big, but once you have that, that's such an amazing aha that it's like, yo, now you got to run with it. And you might be like run into a few wrong directions and be like, oh, not that way, not that way, not that way. But you still carry that charge with you. And that is so exciting. And I think if you're like, oh gosh, I don't know, I'm flailing, I don't know what I like, continue to have the conversation with yourself. Lead with curiosity rather than judgment. Like, and I say this really seriously, like go develop a running practice, develop a movement practice. Like these movement practices where we look under the hood of how we're speaking to ourselves, that directly informs how we are showing up in the world. And I continue to feel like a creative person, even in the throes of motherhood and all this, because I continue to carve out those movement practices that allow me to befriend myself. And then on a great day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm journaling, I'm putting notes in my phone. I'm like, yeah, I've got an idea for this, an idea for that, an idea for that. And like that, because movement is fertilizer for the brain. So if you feel stuck, move your body.
Ooh, powerful, Robin. Thank you as always. So amazing to see you months after running and biking, and you're amazing as always.
Thank you. This was so fun.
More episodes that you're going to love are right around the corner, so definitely make sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, who in your life should see this today? Do share this with them. This will inspire and help those you care about and helps us continue to bring amazing guests. And I will see you there.